Hi, welcome back. You see this dial here? This is called the exposure compensation dial, and it's the most misused and abused dial and feature in photography. And this is today's lesson.
Action!
But before we start, allow me to quickly introduce to you my e-learning website, which is called www.beyond.photos. You notice that we have been publishing a lot of YouTube tutorials here. I hope you enjoy them. But to keep us going, I hope that you also subscribe to our e-learning courses. They are not expensive at all because they are undergoing promo now. There are a total of 18 e-learning titles there that you can choose from every genre of photography. Apart from that, what is even more exciting is our premium courses. Premium courses are a year-long subscription that you can subscribe to for just $25 a year. That's right, the whole year. Instead of $120 a year, we want you to stay home during this COVID-19 pandemic, be safe, and learn a new skill. That explains the promo that we have now. And throughout the whole subscription, every week you get video lessons uploaded to the premium courses. In fact, last week we uploaded like 3 to 4 new topics on our premium courses. Sign up now, support us so that we can continue making YouTube lessons like this for free. And we also launched 2 new series. They are called the SNAPPY series and also the Collection series. Check out these 2 new series here. An exposure compensation dial. Well, think of it as your ruler. But before we go into exposure compensation, modern DSLR has this little sensor called the exposure meter right up at the penta prism. And if you own mirrorless camera, then embedded within your sensor, there's this light detecting sensor. It helps you to calculate whether you're going to be too bright or too dark on the shots and reports to you in this scale here. 0 means you're okay, negative means you're too dark, or positive means you're overexposed. And in some mirrorless cameras, they may look like this. And in some cameras, instead of being horizontal, you may even see it vertical on the left or the right of your screen. How does it work? Simple. When you take a photo, you're supposed to put your shot somewhere within this region here. If you go over here, that's what the meter shows, then you're going to be underexposed. But how does that actually work? That's why it's like a ruler. Now you notice that it starts with 0. 0 is midtone. And let me introduce to you the tonal range. This is your tonal range. Think of it as you take someone's forehead and remove the color, and this is what you see. Midtone here. Too bright, you get highlight tone, and then too dark, you get shadow tone. So that's what the camera does. It reports to you in this meter. It's just like a ruler. If you use a ruler to measure a string which is 5 centimeters, it's going to read 5 centimeters if you start from 0. But sometimes, like me, you're just too lazy to locate where the 0 is in a measuring tape. You start anywhere. And let's assume that you start measuring at 10 centimeters. Your string now will look like it's 15 centimeters. That's not true. Your string is still 5 centimeters. Well, let's go back to your compensation dial. This is what it does. 0 means you're not messing with this exposure meter here. 0 is 0, positive is positive, negative is negative. But if you were to make this positive 1, what you're trying to tell the camera is don't start at 0, start at positive 1. And this doesn't really work when you're on manual exposure mode. Let me show you what I mean. If I take my Canon camera, especially Canon, changing the exposure compensation dial in manual mode does nothing because you're not compensating anything. So if I move the dial up or down, my shot will still stay the same. Oh hey, bear in mind I said no effect on Canon in manual mode. But in certain brands like the Nikon, the exposure compensation dial does something pretty cool in the manual mode. Though it doesn't affect the exposure. But you know what? I'll do a separate tutorial on this cool feature, what it does to the Nikon camera. The exposure compensation dial comes in when you use aperture priority or shutter priority because the camera puts everything to mid-tone for you. So when you dial the dial to be negative, you're telling the camera that I know, but please make it darker. That's what it does. It forces the camera to be darker. It doesn't actually increase or decrease your ISO, or like video camera, it doesn't mess with the gain. So you're not doing anything, you're just moving the scale to let it start at positive instead of 0 or negative. So it's very useful if you're using aperture priority or shutter priority. And if you're on aperture priority, making this negative on your exposure compensation dial would force the photo to be darker. And if you make the exposure compensation dial to be more positive, you're forcing the shot to be brighter. But remember, not on manual mode. It has no effect. Well, even though in some models and some brands, tweaking the exposure compensation dial will make it look like your exposure meter changes, it does nothing. The reason is your ISO stays the same, which you control. Your aperture stays the same, which you control, and the shutter speed surely stays the same as well, which you control, but not the same with aperture priority or shutter priority. In aperture priority, you handle aperture, but the camera can move the shutter or the ISO to match what you compensate it to, and hence why it can become darker or brighter. Well, since we're talking about aperture and shutter priority, you should head on to my YouTube channel. Look for this lesson here where I teach you the most effective way to use aperture priority and shutter priority correctly, because you should be changing your ISO, not letting the camera change your shutter speed. So to summarize this, the exposure compensation dial has no effect on manual mode, even though you may see that your exposure meter changes. Example in Nikon, when you change your exposure compensation dial or value on manual mode, you actually shift the scale. Same like the example I gave you, starting measuring a ruler from 10 centimeters instead of 0. That doesn't make your string 15 centimeters. It is still 5 centimeters because 15 minus 10 is still 5. Remember, you started at 10. So exposure compensation is useful when you're doing aperture priority mode or shutter priority mode. That way you can make the shot brighter by having a positive compensation or darker with a negative compensation. Think of it like a weighing scale which starts at 0. If you're 55 kilograms, you stand on it, it's going to read 55. But if you go to the weighing scale and change it to -5, that doesn't make you lose weight. The kind of shit that husbands do and tell their wife they lost weight. Doesn't work. You're still fat. I hope you enjoyed our tutorial just now. Exposure compensation dial, how it works. If you do, please head on to my website here, www.beyond.photos. Try out our e-learning courses there, and many of them are undergoing promo. There are 18 titles that you can choose from and learn effectively and affordably. And even look at the premium courses. You're gonna like our premium courses. It's a year-long subscription where every week you get video lessons uploaded to the premium courses, which can enjoy a huge genre of photography. Topics are covered in our premium courses. Best part, it is just $25 under our promo now. So continue watching our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe and always hit the bell button. I'll see you in the next tutorial.